All right, so we're in the midst of a series on emotional healthy living. My sister, so my mom's Canadian and has her U.S. citizenship, and now you can have dual citizenship, so she got her Canadian citizenship as well. Was living in Canada, and the Welsh, so part of the United Kingdom, came over and were recruiting for someone to do social work. So my sister went to live in Wales for a few years, hasn't left yet. But she's really good at her job. She's diligent, she's compassionate, and she'll do the research she needs. So when things need to go to court, which happens occasionally, the last to do, she still hasn't lost ever in court. That's the good side. The downside is her employers see that. So invariably, even here, social work is there's always more work to do than you have time to get done. And so for her, she would go in at some point and say, look, you're overloading me. Please don't. And of course, that would never stop. And so at some point, she would burn out, quit the job, go live in Greece cheaply for 3 to 4 months, recuperate, and then come back and then just work somewhere else, or sometimes it actually end up. The last while she ended up just being like a substitute teacher, independent contractor. So they would hire for 3 months and they'd hire her again. But just the idea that I know you're going to burn me out, so instead of just being hired by you, I'll just come as an independent contractor and do that. So my sister was trying to set up boundaries the best she could and follow those the best she could. And her employer was, I'm not concerned about your boundaries. Here's your stuff. Get it done. So today we're talking about boundaries. Now, examples of boundaries can be fences, curbs, clothes, skin, do not enter, or danger signs, bouncers or guards, doors and windows, border crossings, speed limits, social protocols, and as I've discovered, this podium. So if I wander too far from the podium, I'm no longer in the camera angle. So I just make sure that my side is touching. I like to move a little bit. But I'm right here, or I'm right here, but I'm not out there. So are boundaries good or bad? And the answer, I would say, is both, right? So not to hit on a sore subject, but COVID-19, right? So I think, we look at masks, social distancing, and I think depending where you're at, it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. If you're like me, it's some of both, right? Probably one thing we'd agree on was kind of the end of life situations where loved ones couldn't get into their families. That was a bad thing. Now, they established boundaries because they didn't know what in the world was going on and how to deal with it. But again, boundaries can be good, they can be bad, and quite frankly, in your life, they're going to be both. The concept of boundaries is here because we exist in relationship. Right? You exist in relationship to God and to others as well as things. So even again, I exist in relationship to this podium right now. There's a boundary. If I step forward, coffee flies, computer breaks, this falls down, I probably trip. So boundaries always are there because we exist in relationship, again, with things or with people or with God. So, biblical example would be 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt honor your parents. You should keep the Sabbath holy. You should not steal from other people. You should not murder people. You should not lie. You should not covet or strongly desire someone else's stuff. So God sets up these boundaries not because God wants to put limits, you can't do these things, but because actually all of these are good for living, right? These are good boundaries. I don't want someone who lies to me all the time. That's the basis of our relationship, right? And all those things. Now, Old Testament, there were 613 other laws the Jews had to follow. And some of them were very specific, right? So some of them were during that season when they were very transitional, right? Leaving Egypt, and you had those 40 years of wandering. So some of the laws were things like, if you need to use the bathroom, don't do it in the camp. Go outside, right? That's a good law, right? For a variety of reasons. So even those laws God established because in the end it was good for people, right? Good for either God's relationship with them or their relationship with one another, or quite frankly, their own health. Sabbath rest. There's a reason that God established, works 6 days and has a day of rest. He didn't really need to rest, he's God. But he established that for us. And so I had a season where, so I'm part-time with the church, part-time at alternative high school. And so I was doing 5 half days during the week. Then Saturday was preparation for Sunday, and Sunday was this. And after 2 years, I couldn't do it anymore. Where I went into the principal at the school and said, we either need to switch the schedule or I have to quit. But physically, I can't, even though there are half days, I never had a day off. And I just couldn't live that way. And so God establishes these boundaries because it's actually good for us. And so my encouragement there with Sabbath rest is, whatever day ends up being Sabbath for you, rest. Right? If you get some things done, get some things done. But actually look and work at resting. Another example of a boundary, which I misplaced mine. So I was going to pull out my phone and show you. Why would a phone be a boundary? So one of the things I chuckle with my mom is she looks at her phone and says, "Is this a phone?" I say, "Well, really, it's a computer. It does all these different things, but you can also make a call with it." Right? It's so much more things than just a telephone. The beauty of your phone is, if you ever need to make a call, contact somebody, you can. The boundary side of the phone is, when somebody wants to get a hold of you, they can. Doesn't matter where you are, unless you purposely, like some places in Michigan where they can't find you because cell service doesn't get there. But a phone now is always with you. And so as we begin to look at boundaries, one of the things with boundaries is you can make choices in there, right? So there's times when I choose, when the phone rings, I may or may not answer because I've decided the phone does not rule me, right? I will get back with you. But I don't have to be ruled by my phone. I have a choice, right? And there's times when you need to take the call. And there's times when, you know what, this can wait. Same with the text. Same with checking Facebook, whatever it looks like, right? Boundaries. So in those cases, boundaries are good. And so the thing with boundaries then is, again, there's the good side and there's the challenging side. And for all of us, we're going to have both those where we need to establish boundaries and those where whether we're aware of it or not, we're actually crossing boundaries. And we need to begin to become aware. So I talked to a few people, and this is some people that I knew, myself included, have been working on boundaries. And so this is some things they mentioned. It could and will involve many different areas of your life. It's not selfish. It's actually healthy. It helped their mental health. It helped reduce their stress load. You need to stick to the boundaries the best you can. And so for me, as I rework things, Monday became my day off. Now there's times when, so mom has a doctor appointment or I have a doctor appointment. And so I would schedule those on Mondays. Well, then what I found out was every Monday I had something going on. So working on boundaries for me then was, let's try and get as many of these all on the same Monday as possible, right? So this Monday's kind of messed up, but the next 2 or 3 Mondays, they're actually days off. Recently had some meetings, and Monday was the day to have them, right? So that's just how it was. Now I knew that was for a season. So I said, okay, that's okay for a season, but I knew it was a season. It wasn't allowing something in that was going to be there for the next 5 years, right? So, stick to the boundaries as best you can. There's a tendency to overcorrect at the beginning. So self-correct over time. So if one of the boundaries you need to work on is the fact that it's okay to say no, when someone comes up with an idea and believes that you should give your time to that idea, it's okay to say no. But as you learn that, sometimes you're like, oh, I can say no to absolutely everything. And quite frankly, God may be saying it's a season where you just need to say no, right? But at some point, self-correct comes back in, where say no to the things, when you need that space, you need to take that space. There's also times when you need to say yes, all right? People are not obligated to know why you said no, or why you won't. Well, why can't you come Friday? I'm busy. I'm busy being home by myself. For all you introverts out there, right? Which is me. Earlier we saw the concept of boundaries because we exist in relationship. You exist in relationship, again, to God, to others, to things. One of the things we need to say is your boundaries need to become more visible to others and communicated to them in a relationship, right? So if you never say no, people don't know that you don't have any boundaries. You're just practically functioning that way. So to communicate is, I can't this time, or I'm busy. You're beginning to let people know. Now, boundaries, when to say yes, when to say no, to take control of your life. Really good book. All right. Now I'm going to read just one little section out of this. I'm also discovering that I need my glasses more often. And I'm also just discovering I left them at home. So we'll go back to, sometimes my arms can't get far enough away. No, it'll be okay, but thank you. All right, the whole concept of boundaries has to do with the fact that we exist in relationship. Therefore, boundaries are really about relationship and finally about love. So in this case, we're talking about law of exposure, and they've got 10 different laws that it says. All right, the law of exposure says your boundaries need to be made visible to others and communicated to them in a relationship. We have many boundary problems because of relational fears. We are beset by fears of guilt, not being liked, loss of love, loss of connection, loss of approval, receiving anger, being known, and so on. And I read that list and I thought, again, just for me personally, saying, there's a bit more there than I realized. These are all failures in love, and God's plan is that we learn how to love. These relational problems can only be solved in relationships, for that is the context of the problems themselves, in the context of spiritual existence. Because of these fears, we try to have secret boundaries. We withdraw passively and quietly, instead of communicating an honest no to someone we love. We secretly resent, instead of telling someone that we are angry about how they have hurt us. Often we privately endure the pain of someone's irresponsibility instead of telling them how their behavior affects us and other loved ones. Information that would be helpful to their soul. Or sometimes, it goes on and says, sometimes we just give in because it's easier, right? I may disagree with my spouse, but I've learned that it's just easier to give in than it is to stand up for myself, have an argument, get the silent treatment, whatever that looks like. And then you begin to perpetuate things as it goes. And so the challenge with boundaries is it's so good we need them, but there is a danger in the midst of that it's not well received. And so one of the things he talks about is hurt versus harm. All right, so If I tell someone, no, I can't make it Friday, and that's whatever they got going on is very important to them, there's the danger that I will hurt them by saying no. Right? But am I harming them? So there's hurt in the relationship, but hopefully the relationship, in all of those cases, you work at it, right? You work it out. But I'm not actually harming them. Selfishness versus stewardship, right? If I say no to Friday, am I being selfish? Maybe. Am I practicing good stewardship? Probably, right? If I know that I need a break, then good stewardship for James to actually be healthy, and healthy in the big picture, is I need to say no this time. And so, as I use this example, actually it was Friday, wasn't it? A friend just sent me a text, hey, you want to go to so-and-so? And I responded, my mind and heart say yes, and my body says no. But we have the relationship, we can do that. Now, one of the beauty of this is we've talked about and said, look, let's just do impromptu things. And if we can do it, great. If we can't, that's fine too. But actually, because we've committed to doing impromptu things, we actually get together more often than we used to. Even though there's more no's happening than there used to be as well. Helping versus enabling someone. You know, I think as a congregation, one of the things we had to walk out was, what is helping someone? And at what point does it cross the line where you're enabling someone, right? And you're always going to have relationships in your life, not necessarily all the time, but where there's times when it's appropriate to help, and then sometimes where it becomes enabling, right? Where you're the person who meets their needs. You know, and so one of the things we had to do even as a congregation in one situation was say, look, we've helped. We feel like we're in the enabling standpoint. You need to ask God what God's telling you to do, right? So God still may be saying for you to help, but for the rest of us to say, no, it's time for you to stop right now. But the encouragement to keep asking, right? As a situation arises, again, ask. What's God saying? Because God's motivation in the person's life and what he's trying to do may shift in the midst of that. So always come back and ask. But I would say after a first time sometimes, just say, God, what are you saying? Right? What's my involvement or non-involvement in this? So just then, what happens, this is not an exhaustive list, but just some examples. What happens when you cross a boundary without permission, or in the case, wisdom? Awkwardness. So, if as you get to know some people from different cultures, you'll discover that their proximity space, as you're having a conversation, is different than ours. And so the joke used to be, if you go to a missions conference, all Americans were stuck in a corner because, you know, you're talking to someone and they're here and that's too close, so you take a step back, and then they take a step forward until you eventually get to a wall and you can't get out of it until they're that close. So you learn those things, right? So awkwardness, or I was in India a number of years ago, and then about 6 months later, a conference, and he was there, and so, you know, I would gladly hold hands with my wife, but I don't do that even publicly much. We're at the door coming out from the conference. He's from India, he's just standing there holding my hand, and we're having a good conversation, right? So India, culturally appropriate for adult males or women just be walking down the street holding hands just out of friendship. For me, I was like I said, I wouldn't have done that with my wife, let alone someone I didn't know very well, especially in the context of a large group of people I didn't really know. But culturally, it was fine for him. So I died to my own boundary, right? Why not? But it can make for awkward situations. Trouble. So I'm in Canada, I had a friend and his son was a beekeeper, so he gave me a jar of honey. I'm crossing the border at the airport. The little red light is a random thing, comes on, so they search your stuff. I had completely forgotten about the honey, so I did not declare it. So A, it was something you can bring across the border, You just have to tell them. Well, the person in charge was not pleased with me. It was very clear that if they wanted to mess with me right now, they could. Like, seriously, could have messed with me. All over a jar of honey. Now, they're gracious, let me keep the honey, let me go through. But I was crossing a border. There's rules to follow when you cross a border. I was breaking a rule, right? So you can get in trouble. Anger or pain. So sometimes when we cross a boundary, it triggers a bad past experience, or quite frankly, might create a new bad experience. But if there's people who love to hug, there's people who do not want to be touched. So if you're a hugger, great, just ask first, right? Because you don't know what is in the other person's history on why they don't want to be touched, and you do not want to violate them. And hugging is such a, right? Simple, nice thing to do. Injury. So, crossing boundary without permission or wisdom, mental or physical or spiritual. I wrote down death by selfie. How many people have died because there literally is, do not cross this because you might fall off the cliff or whatever, and then die. All because they needed the perfect photo for whichever social media account they were doing. Injury happens in a lot of different, or can, in a lot of different contexts when we cross boundaries. What happens when you don't respect your own boundaries? Misunderstanding, all right? I can't read your mind. Sorry to tell you. So you might have a boundary, let's go back to hugging, that I have no idea about. I'm a hugger, come up, give you a big hug, and all of a sudden you're wrenching to get out, right? Let me know that. I appreciate your friendliness, but please don't hug me, right? There's a something called misophonia. The definition is when certain sounds trigger emotional or physiological responses that some might perceive as unreasonable considering the circumstances. All right? So, when I'm tired, really tired, I cannot stand the sound of you eating. Like, it drives me crazy. And I know some people who, that's life for them, right? It's not when they're tired like me, that's life for them. And so, I've heard already, stop breathing. Kind of hard for me to do. So, if that's the case for you, you have two reactions. I can tell you to stop breathing, right? Don't eat while I'm around you, or begin to make plans and plan accordingly. So, if I'm really that way and it's bugging me, I'll just say, excuse me, I just can't be here right now, right? My family knows why, or again, I'll say why, but I just have to remove myself, right? I don't need you to all leave. I can remove myself from the situation. Or position, right? If someone's a particularly loud eater, don't sit beside them, right? Sit as far away from them as possible. Still be part of the group as long as you can take it, right? But misunderstanding happens because we haven't communicated this. People don't know. We're crossing a boundary. I'm getting the fruit of the frustration of my lack of communication. Anger. By not expressing your frustrations, you eventually burst or undermine others or situations, right? I just can't take it anymore. Well, again, communicate, right? Discontent. So one of the things I chuckle with, again, this is for some of us, not for all of you, but if you're going out to eat, where do you want to go to eat? I don't know. Where do you want to go to eat? And so this was what Libby and I did early on in our marriage. Finally, and we have gotten better, but there reached a point where I said, well, how about let's go to such and such? And then the response would be like, yes, good idea, or no, I don't want to go there. But but we've actually made progress, right? Versus us just volleying back and forth, oh, I don't know where I don't know where I'm going to go. Where do you want to go? Or, I'll just go because you said it, but I don't like your choice, right? Discontent, comparing myself or circumstances to others who I consider have it better, right? So, I see Jay Ulrich and I think, man, he knows everybody. He's got all these friends. I don't have any friends. Jay? Ugh. Whereas my response should be, Lord, thank you that Jay has friends. God, what is in me that's inhibiting friendships? Right? Maybe it's just simply, instead of hiding away on Friday night and saying no just because I don't want to, maybe I should say yes and work on a couple of relationships, right? The idea that we're looking, and again, this is one of the 10 Commandments, I'm coveting, I'm strongly desiring that which you have and I don't have. Start with yourself, right? My goal is not to change Jay so he doesn't have any friends. My goal is actually, where can I work at increasing that in my life? So discontent. And again, lots more, we're not going to go there. So just a couple practical things. Asking for help. All right? Hey, are you free Friday night? What's going through my head is, what are you asking, right? Are you saying, hey, let's go to Applebee's? Are you saying, you know what, my tractor broke down and I got all this manure that needs to be spread? So, if you hear that question, learn to ask, what's up? Right? Find out what's going on before, because maybe you've had a great week and you're like, sure, I'll do my work. Or maybe it's like, I'm just shocked. There's no way I can do anything tonight, But you're not saying yes or no without hearing, or, I might have strength to, sure, I'll go grab some coffee with you, but that's what I have energy for. So, now, if you're asking the question, it's better to say, hey, I'm moving Friday night, would you be available? Get it out there right up front. And then they have the choice of saying yes or no. Respect their decision, right? But just be up front versus that nebulous, don't know what we're for. Again, it's okay to say, no, I can't. And again, for whatever reason is acceptable to you, but also added, and to God. Smiley face. Because sometimes, again, is it stewardship or have I slipped into selfishness? Is it stewardship or is it because I just don't want to put myself out there? Right? There's a verse, well, I'll get there in a second. Don't be offended by someone expressing their need for space or not meeting your needs. Right? At the end of the day, God is your provision. Right? At the end of the day, if we have relationships, I can't depend on anybody, my spouse included, always saying yes. She's not there to meet all my needs, as I'm not there and could meet all of her needs. So don't be offended. If it hurts for a little bit, fine, get over it. Because your relationship is bigger and more important. And again, you don't need to explain why, but there are times when that would be helpful. Right? Can't tonight. So with this particular friend, we were with a group, and I'm saying my journey back from my subdural hematoma is things are a lot better, but I still struggle with fatigue. So when I said I would like to, but I'm too tired, he knew immediately, again, the why. I didn't have to tell him the why. And again, you don't have to, but sometimes it is really helpful to explain. Or sometimes it's, you know what, I need some space, right? We've done all these things this last month. I just need some space for me. Get whatever. Jeremiah 17:9 and 10. The heart is more deceitful than all else. It is desperately sick. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart and I test the mind. And I put it out there because sometimes, again, our boundaries, right, they need to be there. We need them in our life. Always good to test with God is this okay? Am I saying no because it's good stewardship right now? Or am I saying no because, you know what, I have an issue with so-and-so. I just don't want to spend time with them. Right? That might be good for this time, but the next time, God's going to say, you know what, maybe it's time you deal with that issue. Right? So always good, because I don't know my heart like God does. Always good to just ask God in the midst of that as well. Lord, speak to me about my boundaries. And then we'll end with this. Again, communicate, right? If we have boundaries because it's relationship, then you just need to communicate. Right? I don't need to communicate with this podium. Although I need to respect what it does for holding things and the fact that it helps me with a boundary. But relationally, whether it's God, your spouse, a friend, your sibling, your coworker, whatever it is, relationship and boundaries go hand in hand. We can't read each other's minds. We don't know your past. We don't know what you're going through necessarily right now. And even if we do, we don't know how it affects you because it probably affects you differently than it affects me. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Let's pray. God, we just thank you that on this journey for emotional healthy living, God, your heart, first of all, is for us. God, that we respond to life, to others, to you in healthy ways, Lord. And then, God, we're doing that with you. God, we're doing that with everybody around us. God, because your heart is for people. God, your heart is for each of us. And God, as you said, as we gather together like this in the morning, God, you're the head, but we're the body. And we need to get along. And God, and as you bring health in our relationships, Lord, it actually brings healing to us, to others who are part of us, and to others who aren't part of us. And God, and again, that relationship with you. God, we want health across the board in those areas. So God, thank you for the journey you have us on. God, thank you for just the understanding. God, help us all in those places, Lord, where we need healthier boundaries. Lord, just begin to walk about in ways that are healthy across the board. So we bless you and we honor you. In Jesus' name. Amen. Don't think we have any announcements. Is that what for Cindy? All right. What's that? Kyle, did you look in trouble? Excuse me just a second. Feel free to talk. I don't think we have any announcements, but Cindy Wisely from Spiritual Trade.
I think Cindy just practiced boundaries.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. Funny you bring that up, because there's times when I say, you know, I remember one of the other congregations, I wasn't pastor, I was in leadership, but just that administrator was like, don't talk church to me at all on Sunday. I'm here to worship. And I've said, Cindy, I apologize for crossing the boundary too often. Yet once again. All right, can't even find it. Have a great week. No announcements.